Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am going to do a really simple page in my traveler's notebook. I'm just going to use one stamp set and a bunch of scrap paper, and that's it. So the stamp set I'm using is Mega Heart Eyes from Kellie Stamps, and you can see here my scrap bin. It is like full to overflowing, and while I use a lot of scraps today, I don't actually use a lot of scraps. So the scrap bin is really it's a huge thing for me. I don't like to throw away a lot of paper, so all of my kind of reasonable size scraps go into this bin. If it's sort of close to 3x4 or 4x6, I trim those down to kind of usable sizes. Otherwise, everything else just gets kind of chucked in there. And it's probably about time that I go through it again and get really ruthless because, as you can see, I can barely shuffle through all of these things. Yeah, but I love it. It's all such pretty paper. What you can see me doing is I'm just going through the bin as best as I can and pulling out a few scraps. My page is 8¼ inches high. I figure I'm going to need 8 to 9 bits of paper. They need to fit the width of the page, and I'm going to trim them down into strips. So that's what I'm doing. You can see it's not like a totally cohesive color scheme. I'm just trying to find patterns and colors that kind of work nicely together. The other thing that I am doing is I want to put in here a couple of kind of solids. I want to do some stamping on some of these scraps, and so rather than stamping onto very busy backgrounds or sort of high contrast backgrounds, I want some kind of plainer patterns or colors. So I'm going to end up with a wood grain and one of the pink solid colors that I've picked out there. Now I'm just sort of vaguely working out how big I need these stripes, and to be honest, my brain just couldn't quite work out how I was going to split 8¼ inches into 9, and so I'm really just eyeballing it. I'm cutting each of these strips just under 1 inch, and you'll see me do more planning for this than I thought I would for something that was going to be so simple. So you can see what I mean when I say, like, I pulled out 9 scraps of paper and that seemed like it was going to be a lot, but actually I'm only using a little strip of each one, and so the pile of paper that goes back into the script bin is pretty much as big as it was when it came out. Now a few of these scraps are not quite straight, so I think it'll work. I've got everything here. Like I say, I'm just going to arrange these. I'm going to just try to visually make sure that everything is balanced, because I've got like a super dark pattern there with the polka dots. I've got a lot of pinks. I just want to make sure that it's all a little bit balanced before I start working. And the other thing that like, this looks really good to me, I've laid it out, but the 2 strips that I want to stamp on are right next to each other. That's not what I want to do, so I'm just kind of shuffling those around a little bit so that I can add the stamping, and they're not going to both be sitting beside each other or underneath my photo, which I do intend to put kind of in the middle of the page. Now on the left here, I'm going to do like a stacked stamped title. Like I said, this page is going to be super simple, and so I'm just pulling out the stamps that I want to use for that title, and I'm going to replicate those over on these strips. So what I've done is gone and grabbed some ink colors that I think are going to work nicely tone on tone with these little strips. The brilliant thing about cutting the strips first and then doing the repeat stamping is I'm not wasting a whole bunch of paper, so I'm only stamping the piece that I need to. So I've got a pink ink for this adorable stamp, and I'm just going to repeat stamp onto this strip. It's a little bit harder to kind of get like a consistent pattern, but it's also less noticeable if you don't. So there are pros and cons to doing it this way. I just found it was so much easier just to do the little strip. It was super quick to do. I don't really need to do the whole strip. I have done the whole strip, but you could definitely trim your strip of paper down first and then stamp it. I'm just going to trim all of these off in one go at the end. So that's how easy it was, and I love how the pattern looks with that other stack of patterns. It kind of just adds a little bit of something to it. Now the other stamp I'm going to use is this little one that says Cutie, and I start stamping and I realize really quickly that I don't love how dark this ink is. Like, it's the right color, but when you look at in comparison to the rest of the sort of patterns on the strips of paper to the right there, it is very bold. It stands out way more than any of really the other ones do. So I went and grabbed a much lighter ink, and to be fair, this one is probably too light. It's not as dark as I want it to be. When it's freshly stamped like this, it does look darker, but as it dries off, it lightens up quite considerably. So what I needed was something in between, which I don't have, so my preference was always to go lighter rather than darker. So this one I am filling up the whole strip, even though I don't need to. I'm just going to trim off the darker edge on the left-hand side. It's not really going to be an issue. I'll do that as I go to stick these down into here. Now, like I said, for something that's sort of a really simple kind of scrap page, what I'm doing is trying to do a whole lot of prep beforehand to make sure that everything works out the way I want it to and is nice and neat. So I've prepped which order all of my strips are going in. I've done all of the stamping. They're all ready to go. I'm ready to glue them down into my book. So what I want to do is make sure that the middle strip is going in the middle of my page. So I've just made a couple of marks. I marked the center of the page, and then I marked top and bottom so that when I glue this strip down, I can line it in between those two marks and make sure that it's nice and straight and in the middle of my book. Now, something a little bit different than normal, I'm not using tape runner today because I would have used a million meters of tape runner trying to tape all of these strips. I want to stick them so that they are super flush down onto my notebook. This notebook is my flat notebook, so I'm not using any kind of dimensional embellishments or alphas or anything in this book, so I want everything to be super flat, super stuck down. And so I am using some smart glue from scrapbook.com. It's super easy to use. It dries really quickly, and that's one of the things that is a real requirement for me using liquid adhesive in a notebook like this. I don't want to have this notebook out on my desk for, the next few hours just to wait for glue to dry. I want it to dry as quickly as possible. This glue is perfect for that. I will say I prefer the little bottles to the larger bottle. It's just easier for me to control. So if you're a little bit heavier handed like I am or tend to be, the smaller mini bottles are definitely easier to use. So I'm so pleased, so proud of how my planning worked out. The strips lined up perfectly. I have to trim off all three sides. I'm just making sure that those are all stuck down nice and securely, especially in the center of my spread here, so that when the notebook gets folded up, nothing's going to pop off. And then I can go ahead and just trim these straight away. Like I said, the glue dries really quickly, so I've got no worries about just using my scissors. I just flip the page over so that I can see the edge of the page, line it up, and trim it down. Obviously, a larger pair of scissors helps with this sort of thing. And I'm just making sure I get right into the corners. And then I've got this really secure, really flat, but really colorful pattern-filled page on the spread of my notebook. Now, the only other thing I'm going to add to this page is, of course, my photo. I edited my photo to be black and white when I knew that I was going to be doing this kind of scrappy pattern-filled page. Having a colored photograph on here would really have competed with all of those different colors and patterns, especially since my photo wasn't that super quality anyway. There's a lot of kind of black and white pattern in my photo. It's a gray blanket with a black and white dog and a black and white pillow and a black and white top and a black and white book. So black and white made total sense. It also just helps this to be a little bit more of a graphic kind of simple page. So I've already gone ahead and done my journaling. I've just run a little piece of scrap paper through my typewriter, so I know vaguely how much text I'm working with. I'm going to stamp my title just directly onto the page of the notebook. I am trying to get it as straight as possible, and I am lining it up kind of eyeballing it with the top of my photo, and I'm stacking those two stamps together so it says Adorable Cutie, and then I'm going to add kind of like a subheading underneath there. There's another stamp that says Acting All Cute and Stuff, which is exactly what Lil was doing. This is quite a long, narrow sort of stamp, and it's not going to fit in the gap here. So what I'm going to do is partially stamp half of the sentiment and stamp that down, and then I'll re-ink the other half of the stamp and stamp it underneath. So the only trick with doing this, if you're going to be kind of cheaty like me and not actually mask anything off, you could mask it with masking tape. The way I'm doing it is just like this, making sure that the stamp is totally clean in between. So I just used a scrap bit of paper and stamped it down a million times just to make sure that there was no remnants of ink left on there. And then I can go ahead and stamp that second piece underneath the first one. So I probably could have trimmed out this journaling and stuck it all down in one go, but because I was, like I said, did it on my typewriter rather than on my computer, it's a little bit messy, the spacing's a little bit all over the place, so instead I'm going to trim out each individual little strip and just glue them all down so that they're kind of centered underneath the title. And again, I'm going to use that smart glue to do that because you don't need a whole lot of it. It dries really quick and it's in that little easy to use bottle. I used to use a glue pen a lot. I've run out of the glue pen and I thought I would have to repurchase it, but actually the smart glue works just as well. So I am holding each of those little strips with my tweezers. It does make it easier. I want to avoid getting sort of gluey, messy fingers all over this page, so that's my little trick there. I'm adding the glue on top of a scrap bit of paper as well, just to, again, try to keep the glue off there. And that's sort of the blocks of my page done. Like I said, I want to keep everything flat, so I'm not adding any embellishments to this page, but there is this very cute little tiny heart stamp on the stamp set, and I decided it needed just a little bit of extra, so I'm going to grab some darker navy blue ink. The stamps that I've used for the title, I've kind of gone more that warmer pink tones with the patterns, and so adding just that tiny little pop of blue really helps to tie in that dark blue navy spot pattern at the bottom. And that is this page all done. Super simple, super easy. I mean, I wish it used up more scraps than it actually did, but there we go. I've at least used a little bit, and that's a win for me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching, there are a couple more videos on screen. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.